Hello, my astrology friends. This is Lada from AstroladaOfficial, and today my guest is astrologer Krizstina Simon. Hello, Krizstina.
Hi, Lada. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much to having me back again. Today, we're going to actually talking about a little bit of medical astrology, right? So because of I would like to, I made a course, and the course is, like it's really lengthy. It's 18 hours, and it is going to talk about the principle of medical astrology. And also, we're going to talk a little bit about the morals and ethics as well, because every single course that I do in live or recorded doesn't matter. I always talk about the ethic in astrology, how you have to deliver the messages. And it's not obviously medical astrology, it is just a tool to help your client to realize the energy, because sometimes medical professionals overlook. They don't have time, especially nowadays, everything is so rushy and nobody pays attention for the body soul spirit, what they're supposed to, it's supposed to be integrative and holistic, but they don't. They just, like want to talk about the symptoms and just actually get rid of the symptoms. So, and that's why medical astrologer could help actually to manage and actually give guidance. Okay, go to your doctor, please, and tell them that's where they have to look. For example, I had a lot of clients they didn't find, for example, thyroid issues. And I was like, but you do have thyroid issues. No, but they checked my thyroid level and there was nothing. And I said, okay, go to check the noodle. Yeah, they did an ultrasound. I was like, okay, there is something. I see a noodle on your thyroid, go there, right? And she had to go. She was actually a Slovakian woman who lives in Germany, but not even Germany. They found it. She went to Switzerland, finally. They found the noodle because she already was bleeding from the throat. Okay. And I was like, this is crazy. It's not possible. They don't find it. That's there in your astrology chart. I can see actually autoimmune disease. It's not necessarily thyroid disease. It's not necessarily going to show up in your blood test. If you are actually checking the thyroid level, you have to check the antibody. Okay. And that's what I told her. So she went, she checked, and she's forever grateful. Many, many times, I'm not saying I'm like a medical medium, but I told you guys before, because I did a silver mind technique, and because on silver mind technique you have a whole day when you are practicing your intuition and detecting illness in the body. Perhaps because I was 17 the first time I finished that, perhaps that's why I see people right away, and I am like detecting also with my whole being, and that's why I know right away what to check in the astrology chart. So I can talk about, and I talked about this also in my course as well. But I truly believe medical astrology is supposed to be practiced by someone who has some kind of credit in medical field. So either a psychologist, a doctor, a nurse, because of medical astrology really requires a lot of knowledge about anatomy and also anything to do with pathology and medicine as well. So I truly believe later on, the ISAR or whoever is the World Organization of Astrologers, they're going to require some kind of medical knowledge, because of there is a lot of responsibility over here. And you can never diagnose the person. You can actually tell them, all right, here it is what I see. Would you please go to? And if you know the person very well, you can be firmer, because sometimes people don't want to listen and you still want to save their life. Um, by the way, on my karmic workshop, somebody asked me actually, but don't you feel like you get into their karma and you should not, if you're going to guide them to go to the doctor? And I was like, darling, the blueprint, when you sign up for this life, you already signed, the contract, who do you want to meet? So the person who came to me found me, so I can actually manage and help them, even if I'm firm with them, to go to the doctor and will be saved, or whatever is the outcome of their karma, personal karma. But I don't think so you're getting in, because I think karmically you are meeting the people who you need to meet. So no, it's not. So you can help, because otherwise doctors and like whoever here to help and heal, they would get into other people karma, and they will have to pay the responsibility of that. But I think we are interconnected, and we are into each other's life for a reason, karmically. So yes.
It's very simple example. Someone might have been chronically ill for years and years. They've gone to hundreds of doctors, no resolution. And then someone appears when the time of their karma has run out with this disease. Someone appears and tells them, you're missing vitamin B1, whatever. And suddenly this solves all their problem or something like that, So when God has decided you have to be healed, you'll find the right specialist, the right advisor and remedy.
Yeah, that's how I see as well. And there is a lot of ethical responsibility, definitely, when you are reading a chart. And it's not only medical astrology, purpose or anything, even in relationship astrology, do not harm. That is the fundamental principle in astrology or any kind of help. It could be a doctor, for example, do not harm. I remember when I had my bioidentical hormones, and I went to the walking clinic, and over there they told my husband, two little children, like, oh, take her to the hospital, she's having a heart attack. The children was crying in the backseat. That was a doctor, right? And George was, they didn't call ER. We had to go with the car. We were running there. Okay, they checked me right away. No heart attack. Okay, let's do an MRI. All right. Oh, you know what? You don't have a heart attack. You have a brain tumor. And it was not, why do you say that in front of my children? I couldn't take anywhere. And it was two doctors the same day misdiagnosed me. And this is crazy.
Heart
So
attack and a brain tumor on the same day. That shouldn't.
and I was like, you most likely have a brain tumor, but then they did the MRI, and then they are like, oh, you don't have brain tumor. It is your bioidentical hormones. It just didn't fit me. A lot of women is okay with that, but it didn't. So I was like, geez, okay, all right. So definitely, responsibility with your words. No matter how you deliver, what you deliver, you can be brutally honest, but it's still like, do not harm, and always give remedies, always give hope and remedies over there, and actually guide them to the right direction. That is very, very important in astrology, to guide them to the right direction. Keep your standards. All right. So that's, I think, and I hope, the astrology community going to really take that very serious if it's come to medical astrology. And in the course, actually, we're going to talk about disease by elements. And right now, I'm not going to say all the elements, guys, because you have to understand then my conversation with Lada would be 20 hours, right? I'm going to give you examples. So because many times I'm being like, oh, you only talked about water elements. Why didn't you say anything about, air elements? So I'm just going to give you examples over here. What is the course about, all right? And how did I build up? And it's going to include Astro-Herbalism as well, because I'm a clinical professional herbalist. So you're going to know and learn about the herbs as well, and gemstones, and what kind of remedies for exercises and meditation and everything, right? So, for example, elements are really, really important in medical astrology. For example, the water elements, Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, they are really emotionally overwhelmed. We all know that they are hypersensitive, they have mood swings and attachment issues. So they prone to actually lymphatic issues, or they prone to actually hormonal imbalances, or prone to mental issues as well, and obsession. And the air elements, I'm gonna give you another element as well: overthinking, anxiety, restlessness, restless leg syndrome, for example. I never heard that before, but like 10 years ago, I started to read about that, and I was like, oh my, for them, like they can't even rest at night. But, very, very scattered thoughts. So anyone who can have, for example, Aquarius, Libra, Gemini, and they have their ruler, Mercury, for example, or Uranus in a bad position, they can have ADHD, they could become the genius or spectrum. And we also going to talk about indicators of the disease. Actually, I talk about, because it's not life, and in my course I talked about autism, suicide, gambling, because if you believe or not, gambling is a mental illness. It's an addiction. It is exactly very similar like heroin addiction. And my very first book actually was published in university, and it is about pathological gambling. And I wrote the book because of my brother was a gambler and lost his huge everything. He was a really famous footballer, soccer player, because of gambling. So I wrote about that, and it was hard to write about it, but I could detach myself from the situation, and it got published in newspapers as well. So yes, we're going to talk about that also. Like anything to do with sometimes mental dullness also for air signs because of
Mental?
yes.
Sorry, I didn't hear mental.
Dullness, like
Illness.
sometimes yes, lack of mental clarity, especially if they're ruler, because they're ruled by Mercury and Uranus, which is actually the Akashic record, and the crown chakra Uranus is the higher knowledge, right? And Mercury is the knowledge also. And if it is in bad shape, or if it is the essential dignity, if it is in detriment or fall, they suffer more from it than, for example, someone who is not ruled by Uranus or Mercury. So if you have the ruler, we just talked before we started, you ruled by Saturn, and for you, Saturn is really generous many times in your life. So if you are ruled by Saturn, and it's going to make an amazing, aspect by transit or progression, or even in your natal blueprint, it is going to be a lot better for you, for example, than someone who is not ruled by. For example, with the same aspect for a Pisces, it still could bring in some challenges. But if someone ruled by that, it's going to give more opportunity over there. And it's vice versa with everything. All right. And the other thing, we're going to talk about also, and who I learned from, obviously, I'm a psychiatric nurse and a surgical nurse and a special educational teacher. So I was with autistic children. I had my workshops. No, you don't call it workshops. When you have to go practice and work out there for 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. I did that in homeless center, mental hospital. I worked in mental hospital, and also in jail. I had to go and actually do interviews with criminals as well. So I have a lot of experience, and I truly loved it. I really loved it, and I was learning a lot from Judy here. So I took all her courses and I read her books, all of them. She is one of the astrology teacher who I look upon in medical astrology, actually. And she was actually talking about the humorous, but it's not just her, because in my clinical herbalist study, when I studied Astro-Herbalism, we also talked about, the four humorous over here. Actually, the blood, which is warm and moist, the yellow bile, the black bile, and the flag. And everyone, so we're going to, and I talked about that also in my course, and also Chinese medicine as well a little bit, but I'm not going to go to the element of metal and wood in my course. I just went actually the earth and, just like the astrological sign, because I didn't want to confuse you guys, because otherwise I would have a course of like 50, 60 hours, and then it would be really, really confusing. So I just really wanted to give you a very, very deep knowledge over here, and it's going to be stable, right? So, for example, yellow bile, right? It is choleric. Mostly it is the very, very ambitious, aggressive, fiery signs. So anything to do with the fire signs, Sagittarius, Aries, and Leos, right? So you're going to learn about that over here because it's very, very, very important as well when we are going to check illnesses in the chart. Okay, so that will be very important. So, for example, Aries, as I said, it's fiery. It's anything to do with choleric. The temperament is hot and dry. We're also going to talk about the temperament because of in disease. It's very important as well where to actually detect the disease in your chart. And, in physiology as well, if Aries, for example, it is very tender or very masculine, or, for example, quick metabolism, especially if the ruler is in exaltation or in rulership, that's we're gonna talk about the metabolism as well. Or what is the stress over there? That is anything to do with frustration, impatience, and anger for Aries. So we are talking about this as well in the courses, and the meridians, also the acupuncture meridians for Aries, it is the gallbladder and the liver I'm talking about in the course. So you're going to have a lot of knowledge sign by sign, right? So every single sign over here. And if I'm going further, we're also going to actually talk about the yin and the yang. So that is the Chinese medicine over here. That is the North Node and the South Node. South Node is the outlet. It is the excess energy that you get rid of. North Node is in the inlet, wherever you're going to get the energy, in your body. All right, so we're going to talk about that kind of fire and water, dark and light, everything, and how to actually balance out the two and try to find a silver lining in medical astrology. So that is going to be very, very important. And as I said, excess yang, for example, it is a lot of heat. So we're going to talk about that, how to balance that. And excess yin, it is very, very cold energy, and how to balance that, right? With the opposition, with the axis energy. So when we are talking about medical astrology and how I built up this course for you guys, I also talked about the decans, because decans is very important. Decans is actually every single sign in whole sign astrology divided for 3 parts. The first 3 10 degrees, second 10 degrees, and the third one, and it goes by element. So, for example, if it is Aries, for example, 21 degrees Aries, that is already Aries, Leo, and what is Sagittarius decan already. Right? So you are going by element. And what you're going to get from that Sagittarius is, okay, fat, because Sagittarius, Jupiter's rules anything to do with fat cells and liver, for example. And you can already put a layer over there, and other layer in medical astrology, check the liver also, or maybe recommend a liver detoxification for the person if it is, affected in a bad way. All right, so yes, that's what we're going to talk. And as I said, in Chinese medicine, we're going to talk about the 5 elements, not like Feng Shui based, the wood and the metal, but we're going to talk about the earth, fire, air, water, and actually the ether itself, which is the connection to the Akashic record. So that's that's how I built it up. And then we're going to also talk about the houses, which is really important. And that is actually the 6th, 8th, and the 12th houses, and the ascendant as well. But here I have to mention right away, guys, if you don't know the time of birth, obviously you don't know where is your 6th house, 8th house, 12th house, right? We still can perfectly detect illnesses or help you. Why? Because then we're going to use Neptune, Pluto. Pluto is plague and generational disease and anything to do with genetic. Neptunian energy, right? Neptune is viruses, but also mental illnesses, right? Uranus energy, anything to do with neurology, seizures, right? Anything to do with bacterial infection. So obvious, I still capable to detect a lot of things. By the way, I do ratification. I forgot to tell you, but or maybe I have mentioned that either to you or Sama, but I did finish with Chris Byrne the ratification course, and I do ratification also if anyone would like to have. I just gonna tell Chris to put that on the site. I forgot somehow. But I do that. So if somebody knows, and want to know, I do a really good ratification if you want to. But even if you don't know, I still can help. And we still can help, because then you still see the planets and the signs and the elements it is in. So the layers and even the decans going to help a lot. So you're still capable to read a chart very well. So anything to do with the first house, guys, you most of the people who are actually on Lada's channel, you guys know a lot of astrology, and that is the physical body. All right, anything to do with your structure. So the sixth house is actually anything to do with digestion because it's ruled by Virgo, right? Anything to do with your daily habit, your work and health routines. And it is really important because as an astrologer, you should see the body holistic, right? And I talked about actually also, and I'm gonna give you just in a second some example for that. For example, Saturn, Mars, if I'm going to take the malefic ins, how to actually check on spiritual level and mental level and everything. Just give me a second over here. So yes, so anything to do with acute illness, sixth house, or infections or immune response also. And then the 12th house, anything to do with, no, 8th house actually, anything to do with transformation, surgeries. 8th house is surgeries, but also it's the reproductive system as well. And then, like hormones as well. For example, reproductive hormones. And 8th house is also chronic illnesses and permanent illnesses. You don't call it permanent, you call it...
Genetic almost. Genetic.
Yes, it is. So, but also it's regeneration because eighth house is Phoenix. So you can see if the person, obviously, you don't have the right to tell the people if they're gonna die or no. I don't think so. We have the right
No.
because we are not God. And even if they want to know, I'm sorry, it is just not me. Because, there is miracles and miracle could happen to everyone. Doesn't necessarily happen to everybody, but it could. Right. So I just don't take hope. That's what I said. Don't harm, But yes, so anything to do with sex organs elimination, and very, very important because you just talked about that, and we talked about that many times. You're doing actually detox and parasite cleanse just like me. And that is, guys, itself, parasite cleanse healed, right? You got healed as well.
Yes, absolutely. Incredible.
And you do the diatomic earth and other herbs.
Yeah, now I'm just maintaining the atmosphere, but it's my digestion, cravings, bloating. It's incredible. It's gone.
How long did you have to do diatomic earth?
I'm doing it daily now because it's good for hair, for skin, and I don't have cravings for sweet stuff. And it's like basically I eat once per day and mostly fruits, vegetables, grain,
Yeah.
And before it was a struggle because something was making me eat more, something was making me crave bad stuff, and it's
Candida and parasite could be crazy. And because of diatomic earth has silica, so it's Saturnian, right? The food grade. You can find it on Amazon if you want to order, guys. And also for gingivitis, people, for example, if they have gingivitis, they just actually do it with diatomic earth.
I put it with water and do it around my teeth so they don't bleed.
Okay.
I have being very strong areas as well. That's my very sensitive.
But you can also do oak root. I'm gonna send it to you because that's really good for, yeah, that's very good for teeth. Yes. All right. So we talked about the reproduction. And by the way, The how I built it up and how I recorded that for you. The moment I talk about eighth house, for example, reproductive anatomy, you're going to learn also. If it's Cancer, for example, the fourth house, right, and moon is observation, sun is vitality, for example, in medical astrology. And when I talk about that, I also going to talk about Mercury and a little bit, the chest is the fourth house, so it's also the very last lobe of the lung, for example, the third lobe, it is actually already cancer related. The others one and the respiratory, everything is Mercury, but that one could bring in pneumonia, for example. And especially, I told you guys, when Mars going to be in Cancer, we're going to have a lot of new disease with pneumonia, and that's what it was. A lot of hospitalization with pneumonia because Mars is frustrated in Cancer, and it's creating a lot of fire. For example, we wanted to go to the Keys. We cannot go to the Keys because it's on fire right now. So this is crazy what Mars does in Cancer. Yeah. Yes, unfortunately. But that's what I'm saying. So we're going to learn about the anatomy as well whenever I mention a house over there or whenever I mention a sign. So anatomy, endocrinology as well, just not in very deep. You're not going to become a nurse from my course, but you're going to have the right knowledge for definitely. All right. And then we're going to talk about the 12th house, and the 12th house importance, anything to do with karmic issues as well, and karmic disorder, and mental and spiritual illnesses as well, hidden illnesses. 12th house is really, really good to hide illnesses. For example, the Epstein-Barr syndrome, many times they don't find it, and it's create Hashimoto and autoimmune disease. And actually, you need just a diet. Medical Medium has amazing books about Epstein-Barr and Hashimoto. So if you want to, you can start. I'm juicing right now to actually put my Hashimoto in remission. So hopefully in half year, I will be capable. So definitely, but the 12th house could be focus on suicide, anything to do with addiction as well. And it could be drug addiction, pharmaceutical, alcohol, gambling, as I said, but it could be also hidden autoimmune diseases as well, Hashimoto's, as I said, or grave disease. Um, all right, so on dream therapies as well. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about Chiron a lot, the wounded healer, because it's very deeply in 12th house, for example, and there is a healing gift over here, but it has to go through some kind of mental and spiritual practice before it's going to be capable to heal. It has to go through.
Chiron.
Yeah, Chiron, for example, in 12 or 8 house, you have to do your shadow work or mental, getting rid of your mental illnesses or your fears, for example, to be able to get Chiron help over that to heal. So yes, that is very, very important. And then we're going to talk about each individual planet over there. As I said, sun is vitality, moon is anything to do with observation. But the sun is gold, the heart, aorta, it's anything to do with your vital forces. And the moon is silver, it is also mother's milk as well, the water and the plasma in your body, it is very important. Anything to do with womb. Neptune as well, it is the eternal womb, but the moon, it's literal the womb and the female organs as well, or the female hormones, progesterone and estrogen as well, and they are crazy. So I always was like, okay, next life, I want to be a man. That's definitely. If it is everything the way it is, I am like, are you kidding me? Since we born and since we getting our period, we are always suffer for something. This is like crazy. Yes, so the female hormones are truly, coming with PMS and then going to menopause and the birth and everything. I was like, okay, next time, please let me be a man. We'll see. I don't know.
I've spoken to my grandma. She said no one was getting such PMSs, and perimenopausal symptoms, but they lived very differently with the cycles of nature.
Yeah.
All the food was grown in the garden and no chemicals, so it was a different.
They didn't have modified food. First of all, they didn't have Roundup, and they still sprayed because I remember my grandparents, they would be 100 something, and they were spraying or with something the apples or not to get bug, but it's once a year, and it was not that, it was really really distilled and like dissolved in a huge amount of water, so it was not constant poison in their body, and they really woke up with the sun and went to bed when the sun sets. So the rhythm, they
The
didn't have that kind of new age stress.
with the
And cortisol, we are talking about cortisol also, and the cortisol, the stress hormone, obviously that is the most, and that is the worst ever hormone we can have, because that is a modern society illness. Everybody is stressed. We don't sleep well necessarily. Everything is blinking in the room. For example, there is a lot of EMF issues. Oh, by the way, we are talking about in the course also cancer and EMF as well. So I'm going to give you a lot of remedies and a lot of knowledge over here. So yes, for example, Venus is copper and sugar, anything to do also with the kidneys, right? Because in Libra. And Venus also rules, just like the moon, estrogen and progesterone. Venus has more saying in estrogen dominancy and progesterone than moon. However, together it's very, very important. And we're going to talk about the liver, Jupiter. I was already the carb storage as well by Jupiter, and weight loss, obesity. And when to start a diet, for example, by progression or transit, when is the best time to start a weight loss diet? It's always good, but sometimes if somebody wants to do intermittent fasting, for example, as I said, you are taking the Saturnian diatomesh Earth, it helps you with fasting because it's decreased the craving. Saturn decrease everything and kills all the bacteria and candida, and obviously that is going to help you with that kind of craving. So then we're going to also talk about Astro-Herbalism and anything to do with the global healing tradition and unity and diversity. So everything around the world, I collected all kind of traditions for you guys. Actually, I learned that with my clinical herbalism study. So it was easier, because I had like 400 pages about this global healing traditions, and I brought that in for you actually in my course as well, in different contests a little bit, but I did. But the planetary association with herbs, for example, and also the zodiac sign, and also what kind of herbs you can use in general for the zodiac sign, just to have some kind of personalized remedies over there. For example, let's go with Aries again. Planet Mars, Aries, Scorpio, anything to do with ginger, turmeric, cayenne pepper. That is the one everybody knows, right? But also black peppercorn, for example, anything which is really spicy over there. It could have actually an affected Mars in fall, for example, or it could also take away inflammation. So we're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about, as I said, essential dignity beacons, and also what orbs we are using in medical astrology. Closer it is, obviously, stronger it is. Also, we're going to talk about the angles, because it's very important if it is a malefic planet in an angular houses and making a square or an opposition. Actually, in medical astrology, if you believe it or not, guys, square is the third one. Actually, the opposition and the king kongs is yes, it's very bad. So the opposition first, and the King Kongs, it's really, really bad. But you know, we are watching also squares as well, because it's require actions. But with squares, it's easier the healing than with opposition and King Kongs. Nothing is impossible. I tell to everyone nothing. As I said, miracle always happens. But you know, you just have to lead them to the right directions. And if you have, you know, like a lot of field, you are capable to. And they're very good to work with other people. So, for example, if I'm doing medical astrology, I do have my people with Cairo or you know, acupuncture, and I can actually, okay, I trust this person with my life. You can go here, or you can go to hypnosis in St. Petersburg, for example. You know, if you have any mental blockage over there, or very unconditional fear and it's holding you back, and it's very important. And I also recommend actually not only Jose Silva mind technique, but also Louise Hay, guys, because Louise Hay, I just, that woman was just such a joy, and so honest and good, and you know, never criticized anyone. I just truly, truly loved her. And what I wanted to say over here, she always said everything is psychosomatic. And because I was working in a mental hospital, a lot of issues with organs really, truly was psychosomatic. That's why when you are looking at a person chart, you will have to definitely check Saturn on the mental level and spiritual level and everywhere, but we're going to talk about also. So, for example, I also talk about malefic and benefic planets and the rays. You know, what kind of aspect does it make, for example, and what is nullifying the other aspects, for example, very, very important. Because, for example, Saturn is always going to repress, right? And it's cold, and it's, for example, hypothyroidism, or it's slow and cold and dry. But Mars, for example, is heat and fast, and Mars is always hyperthyroidism, hyperactivity, anything, you know, inflammation, and anything to do. It's Mars is a stimulant, right? Excessive energy, while you know, Saturn is something what we are missing out from the body. And then here it is, for example, what I was talking about, mentioned already multiple times, you know, when we are taking care of the charts like the whole body. So we are going to check the dense physical, the emotional and mental and spiritual astral body as well. For example, for Saturn, you know, anything to do with bones, teeth, right ear, joint, calcium, for example, as well. All right, that is also stamina as well, especially if it's together with Mars. Anything to do with mineralization, hypofunction, right, rigidity, stiffness, rheumatoid arthritis, for example, arthritis. And on the emotional level, Saturn is very cold and dry, and it is restraining. Saturn can actually over here do a lot of fasting, controlling, and you know, very depressive and negative. And you know, in traditional astrology, Saturn actually was the planet of death before they discovered Pluto. So Saturn is also old age, and you know, how we get it. Even in your chart, you can see, like, are you going to be surrounded by your family when you are old, or you know, who is the old age is going to be for you. So it's very important, and I was talking about that in my karmic workshop. But yes, so that is also something to do with self-denying. For example, when Saturn is hitting Sun, but I just had, because I'm Pisces and I have my 4-degree Sun in Pisces, without any reason, I was so melancholic. I didn't want to see anyone. I was like, okay, I'm gonna close my door, and I just don't want to deal with people whatsoever. I get really, really melancholic. And of course, I saw my chart and I had to kick myself in butt and start everything. But at least I knew what's happening over here, and I supplemented. And I was like, all right, even if I live in Florida, there is sunshine, let's go grounding. Let's go. Saturn is not in a good position for me, so I had to go grounding, right? Saturn wants grounding, wants nature, right? And and then I was like, okay, let me make more D vitamin, because we're going to talk about the minerals also and the vitamins in this medical astrology course. And actually, it is going to be, everything to do with, for example, the sun is the D vitamin, and how actually Saturn can suck the energy out and suck you dry wherever it is, if you are not friend with Saturn. All right. And then on the mental level, actually, that is, anything to do with imagination, reasoning, and fine matters. Saturn is very, very inflexible, for example, very prudent, and, following the laws, for example, very, very bureaucratic, practical as well. So that is the mental intolerant. Saturn could be intolerant also. I know everything and leave me alone. Capricornian energy also. Just okay. I know who am I, and I'm focused. Don't make me unfocused. Leave me alone, kind of situation. But on the astral body and on the spiritual level, for example, Saturn is wisdom and discipline and patience, guys, So we're going to talk about the whole entire body over here, a person as a holistic person. And I went through all and each signs, and not just signs, but also planets over here. For example, very, very important in medical astrology, as I said, where is your Saturn, for example, where is your Mars? So is it actually which sign it is, what decan it is in? We were talking about that. Is it actually earth, water, so female elements, or is it actually male elements, fire and air elements? Is it day or nighttime birth? Very, very important. All right. Is it above the horizon, below the horizon? Very important in medical astrology. Is it angular, right? Or is it in angular houses, cadent or succedent houses? Very important. Does it do any opposition quincunx? As I said, those are the worst, or square, or does it do anything to do with sextile or even quintile? Quintile is really good as a minor aspect. And does it do any trine? Because then it's easier to heal. With good aspect, it's easier to get healed. All right. And then we're going to go obviously for the benefics over here, anything to do with Jupiter and Venus. It could be very excessive. Actually, Jupiter, it's in the 6th house, 8th house, and 12th house, not necessarily very benefic over there. We know that, right? So it could bring in growth wherever it goes. So it could make a tumor grow, for example, or like some kind of issue with fertility in the 8th house, maybe overweight pregnancies and hypo. Oh my God, I forgot when the placenta. I forgot that word. Hyper. Okay, all right, it's gonna come back to me, but it could create some kind of issue during labor, for example, if somebody is pregnant, or excessive weight gain, for example. It could create, especially with Venus in the 8th house, could be like, okay, pregnancy diabetes. A lot of women has it because they're craving for sugar, for sweets, for watermelon, eat watermelon all the time. So that's could create that over there. So it's not necessarily benefic there. But we are going to talk about that. Benefic planet is always easier to hear with. And we're going to talk about the orbs as well, as I said, and I'm talking about the orbs as well in the course. So like what orbs we consider actually, if it's an opposition or conjunction. We can go up actually to 12 degrees, but in some cases, but I rather to have smaller orbs between. And the lunar nodes, the north node is the cold and the south node is the hot. The south node is deficiency. It's the power outage, for example, and the north node, anything what is coming in and excess, and that is the power surge over there. And as I said, the luminaries, the sun and the moon is the absorption and also the way you are emotionally live that kind of illness, right? Because, for example, if somebody has moon in Capricorn or Aquarius, they might going to detach themselves from the illness, and for them maybe even easier to heal because emotionally they are not connected. Even if the moon is actually not in a good position over there, but somehow they can detach themselves from the illness itself. They're not going to identify themselves with the illness. Never identify yourself with the illness. That's very important. Usually, talk less about the illness because it attracts, obviously, less energy. Don't complain. Try to find a solution. Okay? So that's very, very important as well. All right. So, and then, yes, and obviously we are going to talk about, Neptune, which is sleep illusion, the veil that is the diffusion and the spasm. Anything to do with extremes and electricity, Uranus, the seizures, neurological issue, ADHD, autism, genius, dementia, for example. Yes, I'm talking about indication on dementia, early setup dementia, anything to do with genetic diseases, sepsis. For example, Pluto is very, very deep inflammation and sepsis, or E. coli, for example, and also, venoms and plaques. Pluto rules that area. It's very nasty in medical astrology. But as I said, it's also could be something to do with rebirth. Somebody goes to the table, get a surgery. I have few clients actually who had a near-death experience. I had it when I was a baby, but I don't remember that. But the veil is open for me. That's why I see. But because I was a baby, I cannot say anything about that. But a lot of people who went in near this experience and they talking about that, and they get healed. A lot of them, they had sepsis, for example. And one of my clients, he was so scared from COVID and he had a kidney issue, a UTI, okay, a UTI. He didn't go to the doctor because I'm not going to the hospital. I'm not going anywhere to the doctor because they're gonna put me in I'm gonna have COVID and I don't want to. Eventually, the UTI became a sepsis.
Oh,
He died twice.
wow.
Twice in the hospital. He came back. He has the same birthday as me, February 24th. It's crazy. He came back very, very strong. And, he's fine. He's still alive. I mean, he still has some kind of, issue over there what he has to heal. And he's an older
Did he
person.
see
So
the other
obviously,
side? Did he see the other side?
yes,
Oh,
yes, he
wow.
did.
Wow.
Yes, twice. Yeah.
Wow.
And he has also, young son. I mean, it's yeah, not very young son, but 30 years old son who actually died from the I mean, he got the vaccine, the COVID vaccine and the flu vaccine
Together.
in one time because he was one who wanted to get the vaccine, not the father, but he did. And unfortunately, when he was driving home he died. He got a heart attack.
Wow.
28. So that's, yeah. So, I see both of the side. I see why they wanted to have it from fear or whatever, and why they don't. So I can see both of the sign and I can be compassionate for both of the sign. All right. So for example, we're going to go and I talk about minerals as well, right? So for example, Venus is copper. Copper deficiency, Venus is beauty, right? Copper deficiency creates gray hair. So right now, because I started to have joint pain, and I was like, okay, copper also really good for joint pain as well. I started to do like colloidal copper, and I was like, oh, I don't have gray hair. And George was like, what's happening? Your hair is
Started
getting
disappearing?
darker.
They
Yes,
started like it
disappear.
started.
Yeah, I do. I still have a tiny little bit, if you can see, very, very small amount, but I'm 50 and I don't have gray hair at all. It
Amazing.
here very, very small. So copper deficiency, joint inflammation, but it's also coming right with menopause. And we're going to talk about hormonal imbalance, PMS, and how to heal it, with herbs. And we also talking about menopause, because a lot of time people, when they go into the doctor, they check estrogen dominancy or something, and it doesn't show in the blood test yet. But for example, a lot of people doesn't know menopausal symptoms is, for example, frozen shoulders for half year out of nowhere. You wake up and you cannot lift your arm, and what to do with that and how to heal it. I went through, so I give a lot of, examples and healing method to get through quickly. Or hip joint pain. What is this? What's going on? Oh my God. All right. So that is actually progesterone, low progesterone in the body. All right. But for example, we talk about minerals and also vitamins as well. For example, the Luna, the moon, anything to do also with progesterone, with Venus, right? But also mother's milk, anything to do with a little bit of estrogen, vitamin B, B2 as well. So we're going to see if you are deficient by transit or progression. And if you are, and if you are in menopause, for example, why do you need to take, like, for example, B vitamin or magnesium? So I can see that in the chart and I can actually help you. But obviously, I always say you go to your doctor, you consult with your doctor. It's very, very important, right? And for example, Venus dominancy, exaltation. Why do you have diabetes too? What is actually the healing for diabetes too? Like berberine, bitter melon, any kind of bitter Saturnian herbs, right over there. Okay, what is Venus also? It's not only copper, but it's E vitamin as well, and niacin. Niacin actually be free, the unflashable niacin, guys. It is amazing for depression. It heals cataton depression. And we gave it to our people. For example, SSRIs, right? If you're getting off of SSRI, cold cut, it could create suicidal thoughts, and a lot of people suicidal, even with SSRIs. But as I said, there is opportunity to take niacin and, slowly decreasing and going through with your health professional. But, niacin we gave to cataton depression, and they were starting to talk to family members. They were smiling, not just sitting in the corner in the mental hospital. So it's
I
amazing.
remember I've read this also. I've read this vitamin B niacin. You said the non-flush one?
Yes. Yeah, because, it's so uncomfortable. The
I know.
flashable one, it's
I'll take it. You get red, you get cold and red, your skin flushes.
and you think you have an allergic reaction. I thought at the beginning, and I was like, oh my God, what did I do? Yes, so it's very uncomfortable. But for example, niacin with sauna and red light therapy, it's amazing. And what actually I also discovered during Saturn was transiting my sun, and I get melancholic. I sat right in front of my red light, the red light therapy, and I put the little glasses, obviously, because of my son, and I put that on my third eye and on my Akashic. For example, if you are my crown chakra, if you live in a cold country, Switzerland, Finland, whatever, Iceland, and you barely have sun, you put that over here, it feels like you are on the beach. You put the music in, for example, when the waves are crashing the shore, it's exactly like you are on the beach. Just do that for 5 minutes.
What
It is
red light
yeah,
therapy.
red light therapy. I'm going really close with my third eye and with my crown chakra, and it is right away endorphin and serotonin. Right away, it's increasing dopamine as well.
Yes.
And it's like, oh my God, why do I have good mood right now? So if I'm angry with the boys, or the dog or whatever, I go there. I was like, okay, I need a break. I'm taking my red light therapy. I can't handle them. Either I go for walking or I go to my red light therapy. That's it. So that's working for me very, very well. And I think it would work for, and especially
So,
if you are
it's
better.
Saturn's enemies, the Sun and Mars, and they're the color red. So that would make sense why it would lift you up from depression.
Yeah. Anything to do with sun, anything to do, yes, absolutely. Yeah. So, Mars, Mars is iron. And Mars is also cobalt and phosphorus, for example. So B12 vitamin, because of, iron in the body, B12 also helps over there. Anything to do with folic acid and vitamin F as well. So that is Mars. And if it is actually by transit and progression, it is very badly affected. That person could have anemia, for example, because of the iron. That's why it's very important to understand pathology, anatomy, and medicine. And that's why the herbs, what kind of actually minerals and vitamins herbs could actually have. So I also talk about that in the workshop. So this is very, very intense and dense, and it's a lot of knowledge with remedies as well, for example. Yes. And we're going to talk about also Hygeia, obviously, and Minerva, and we're going to talk about, Sirius and a few fixed stars over here because it's important, in medical astrology. But for example, what is that? It is a case study. Oh, yes, it is dementia, actually. And my grandmother, dementia, because she was always very, very good with mind. She actually was very smart, but by a transit and progression, 3 years ago, she started to have dementia. And I showed that on the course also, what's happened during that kind of situation. Saturn was on her sun, for example, and also, what was it over here?
That's
Mars.
my grandma got dementia, Saturn on Kassan.
Yes.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, Saturn. So when they are old, it doesn't bring in depression. Saturn is your first memory and long-term memory. Moon is could be also short-term memory and memory in the womb of your mother also, because, whatever you have that memory over there, but Saturn could be also the long-term memory. And if it's badly affected, for example, on the sun, or if it creates another, Jupiter it's the high knowledge as well, because rules the ninth house, obviously. And if it's Saturn is opposition with Uranus, or maybe even Neptune, because Neptune is fogginess. It could be amnesia, it could be dementia, but we're going to talk about in general dementia, and we're going to we have chart through my personal experience. Usually I bring in personal experience, because why not? Because that's how I learn, right? That's how we learn, through our family, through our friends, and obvious that's why we talk about them. Yes. And the cognitive decline and dementia. But, I told you before, and I remember I got actually slammed because I said I have my favorite person, Dr. Wallach, and I learned a lot about him. I did a lot of workshop for him, and his longevity supplements is on stock market. He was the first with supplementation on stock. And Dr. Wallach is almost 90. He's an amazing person. And he did I don't know, 10,000 or over 10,000 autopsy. And actually, he realized, dementia, Parkinson, ALS, and other thing. What was the other thing? It's all actually mineral deficiency. It just affects different part of the brain, all right? So, and also, and I know because of they said I don't know anything about Hinduism, and I'm so sorry, I'm not actually taking down any kind of religion over here, guys. I'm not taking about, like Shivas and the Hindu goddess, and there is a lot of side genetic disease, for example, in India, and they have multiple hands because of it's also, it says, Dr. Wallach says, it is mineral deficiency. And that's why also the goddess of Hindus god was actually represented by multiple hands. But obviously in Hinduism, it says, in religion, you can have two more people. And I totally understand that nothing it's against Hinduism, guys. I'm just saying something what I studied with him over here, all right? It could be a mineral deficiency. And yes, he did a lot of autopsy, and he's just an amazing scientist. Dead doctors don't lie. That is one of his book, which is oh my God. And he's a doctor, he's a professor. Dead doctors don't lie. Read it. Amazing. Just
that were killed or?
No, no, no. Yes, not killed, but it says because of the pharmaceuticals and because all bribes, as much as you sell vaccination or medicine or as much as you prescribe, you get paid after that. So obviously there is an interest for modern medicine, right, to sell more or sign up chemotherapy. We just had a lot of issue, people get diagnosed with cancer who never had cancer and they took the chemo and they get very, like badly affected, obviously, because of they get a lot of money after chemo is from insurances, especially in America. So this is just crazy over here. So that doctor don't lie, read it. Amazing. Just like for karma, I always tell everyone, Sepesh Maria, Red Lion. Very first book. I told you, I wrote you once.
Incredible book, The Red Lion. It's the Elixir of Life. The Red Lion,
Mhm.
incredible book. It's a Hungarian writer. Very wow. Yeah.
Yes, she died. She was amazing. She was, oh my God, amazing. She's really, she was really into tarot as well. She was a psychologist. She was just an amazing human being, really amazing human
It
being.
explains the workings of karma through a story of
Mhm.
a a student of esoteric.
Yes, and astrology also involved. That's why I said just read it. It's amazing. Yes, it's very, very good. All right. So, then we also talk about the moon and the Saturn and the early memories and also the long-term memories as well. Why is it really important? For example, in medical astrology, also the planetary transit and progression, anything to do with hormonal imbalances, PMS and menopause as well, for women, and testosterone dominancy. Because if you believe it or not, a lot of men around me doing testosterone shots, and they are crazy. They don't want to get older. It's a society issue over here. We cannot get gracefully older. I cannot get gracefully older. I mean, I was like, Martin, don't be a neurosurgeon. I'm smart. Go and be a plastic surgeon and work on it. I always tell him, but whatever. So yes, it is like, this is unfortunately we're not capable. So we are taking all supplements and shots and whatever, and it's making us crazy. It's synthetic. So it's making us crazy. We're going to talk about also the return, the Chiron return, the Mars transit and return, and how is it actually affect us during that period, health-wise, and what can we do? How can we prevent? Because health, the state of health, when the body functions well, it's the most important to keep health and prevent issues. Because once you already have something, it's harder to heal, guys. I always say that it's harder to heal, but obviously we still can do that. But yes, so we're going to talk about all hormonal imbalances. And I also talk about actually the global and US obesity and the statistic. And obesity is base of cancer, diabetes, anything, and cancer as well, unfortunately. It's linked to it. And, since 2020, what's happened with the world? How does it affect the IQ? And, autism, for example, and things like that. But obesity as statistic as well. And also we are talking about, how to manage weight and weight management. If you don't have an autoimmune disease, it's going to be easier than if you have something more, serious, then it's harder to lose weight, unfortunately. And what kind of transit going to help you to stick with your diet? For example, you don't have to wait Saturn to be in your sixth house or first house. You can go with Mars.
Mhm.
Right, because Mars is activity, so that is very, very important. And then I also talk about suicide indicators in the transit. There is a lot of, and it's coming with geopolitical issues. And after COVID, how did it increase? For example, suicide. People didn't have purpose anymore, and children bullying and cyberbullying, and this is tragic. This is tragic. How many children are suicidal. So we are going to talk about that. How can you detect that in your child's chart if they are melancholic or if they have something? Recently, 2 weeks ago, Zsombor actually driving the bus with multiple children, right? And one of the little girl jumped
Oof.
and she died. And obviously, we have to have grief counselor right now, but it's tragic. It's terrible. Bullying is very, very important. Take the phone away, check the phones all the time. Doesn't matter. I still do it. I don't care. I just go into I mean,
If we're ever getting them a phone before 18, it's gonna be a flip phone, so you
yeah,
can call to.
yeah. I
Yeah.
regretted it, but because of you are in Bulgaria, it's easier for you. But in America, because of the massive shooting, I wanted to give them the phone,
Yeah.
in case I'm just so scared from that situation as well. So that's why I bought the phone. But oh my God, it has to be, you know, a lot of control over there. Yes, so suicidal thoughts, 12 house, Neptune influence, obsession, things like that. And as I said, we are talking about the addictive nature also, and the gambling and pathological gambling over there. So that's going to be very, very important. Autism, for example, I brought up my brother over here who has a Sagittarius stellium in the 12th house, right? And he also have Jupiter in Taurus in the 5th house. And he was actually a gambler, and he has a very, very sweet moon actually in Pisces, but it's in 29 degrees karmic degree, and his Venus is on his ascendant. So he was charming, and he could fool people, and he was a gambler. So unfortunately, it's ruined his career. But obviously, this could actually be any kind of pathological addiction. So this chart could be a heroin addict. It could be, in his case, it was gambling because Jupiter in the 5th house. All right. And then, I also talk about homosexuality and gender fluidity. Why did I brought into medical astrology? Not because of it's anything to do. So actually DSM 456, actually it's in 1973 already. They disqualified that as a mental illness. Thanks God. All right. So it's not, but they still don't know if it is genetic or, it was some kind of prenatal hormones, in the womb, or some kind of toxicity or whatever. Mostly it's not a choice. I say mostly, guys, because in this society, children wants to belong. And because of they want to belong, sometimes they are like, okay, right now I'm bisexual, I'm gay, but they are not, they don't even know what are they talking about. And sometimes it is a choice in some cases, but in general, that is not a choice to be homosexual, all right? But because of there is implication of Plutonian and Uranian energy, and because of we are going to the Aquarian age, which is ruled by Uranus, and Uranus is rules the gay people, right, as well, and because of they can have some kind of mental illness because they are rejected and they are bullied. That's why I brought that in. And the other thing I brought this in because Kennedy. So I told you guys to read if you would like to, the cover-up of Wuhan and the real Anthony Fauci, because over there Kennedy talks about the microplastic. And the microplastic, how does it increase estrogen dominancy? So gender identity crisis, and also cancer, breast cancer, for example, and ovarian cancer. So that's why I tell everyone, don't drink from plastic bottles, don't buy plastic, filter your water at home. So I brought that in, and I brought that actually, the gender identity crisis with Elon Musk's son, who became Vivian. Xavier became Vivian. So, he had the surgery, and I actually examine his chart, and it is really good to actually explain his chart because he was a twin. Two boys were born, and they, had an IVF, for example, the woman. the mother, and how did it affect one child and not the other one? And because he was the firstborn, no, he was the secondborn, his son, I told you guys about my twin study, his son moved actually to the opposition sign. And what does it say? So I explain everything about gender identity, who you are really inside, and sexual orientation, who you are attracted to, and like the mental not mental issue, how do I call that? The bullying, how does it affect the person? So we are talking about that. And we're talking about autism and spectrum in details and ADHD, because these children and the way actually the increased autism right now, and obviously, we're going to talk about vaccination as well a little bit here, and you do your work, your research, whatever you want to, but I have a lot of case studies in the school. So do you have, and the indicators, the genius and spectrum autism, what is the difference? Is it coming with disability, or it is just something, like neurological? So that's what we are talking about. Do you have any questions?
For example, if someone has a lot of the same elements, a lot of earth, a lot of water, a lot of fire, how do you give them herbs or supplements that are for fire, for example, if they have too much fire, or against fire? Or
So
how
it's depend. It's depend. If they, for example, have a very very they have a lot. They have a stellium in fire, or like a Sagittarius stellium, or they are having different planets in different fire elements. For example, you always use the excess energy of fire. If it's affected badly, and if it is weak, for example, the planets are weak, then you can make the fire stronger. So that's depend. So for example, what is in fire? For example, Saturn in Aries, all right? So that is a lot of fire element perhaps, but Saturn is in Aries and it's actually in fall. So then you have to make the fire elements even stronger a little bit. Why? Because Saturn could bring in rheumatoid arthritis. I never can pronounce this word ever during my 25 years living in America. I don't know why. But then you are giving more cayenne pepper. Because, okay, if it is excessive energy, and for example, the sun is in Sagittarius, Mars is in Leo, like the fiery planets in fire, and if it is actually well aspected, then you can give a lot of water. So I have to see the chart. It's not that easy. It's not that simple. It's the aspect and the planet itself. Is it in detriment or not? So that's how we heal.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Krizstina.
Anytime.
An encyclopedia of knowledge. If anyone wants to connect with Krizstina for a personal reading, medical astrology, face reading, any astrologist, I'll put the link below to contact her. Or if you're interested in this medical astrology course, I'll put the link below for anyone who wants to have this knowledge. Thank you again for your contribution. Thank you everyone for being with us. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. Bye for now.
Bye bye.